Our meeting of September 20th, 2023. We are going to start with preliminary matters. Any requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items? I do not have any. Any announcements and appeals? I don't have any announcements or appeals right now. And now I'm going to open up public comment this is related to comments on items that are not on today's agenda. So this is just general public comment. Ms. Gu, do we have anyone attending via Zoom who wishes to speak on items not on today's agenda?
At this time, checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't see anybody moving to speak in the room, so I'm going to go ahead and close general public comment. And then we will move to open our first item. This is, we'll give maybe just one more moment we'll go ahead and read the project description, and then our planner will be joining us momentarily. This is for 1240 West Micheltorena Street. This is a new item. It's to construct a 2,681 square foot, 3-story single unit residence, including a 537 square foot attached 2-car garage on a vacant lot located in the Hillside Design District. The project includes decks at the 2nd and 3rd stories and a roof deck. The project is proposed to be recessed into the hillside with 992 cubic yards of cut grading, such that its floor area is reduced by 50% in the calculation of maximum allowed floor area. The proposed total of 1,341 square feet of floor area on a 6,998 square foot lot is 50% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. The discretionary applications under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer at this hearing are a front setback modification to allow construction in the front setback, and a wall height modification to permit walls within 10 feet of the front lot line to exceed 3.5 feet in height. And then it's also to confirm the environmental analyst determination that this project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under section 15303, new construction of small structures, and 15305, minor alterations and land use limitations. I do question for Mr. Baumann, do we have the applicant here? Is that what you were looking for?
I was looking for them.
Okay.
Maybe you should take
I'm going to do a quick recess, and hopefully we can get in contact with them and just see where they might be. So I'm going to take a 5-minute recess and we'll check back in. So hang on, let me switch my screen here. Oops. Just a quick announcement that, actually, I think I'm muted. At approximately 9:15, so we're just waiting on the applicant to show. So we will be back at 9:15 to check in. September 20th, and we've already opened up the first item, 1240 West Micheltorena, and I've read the project description, and Mr. Baumann was just about ready to start the staff presentation for this item. Ms. Gu, could you please switch screens for Mr. Baumann? Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, good morning, Ms. Kukunda. Let's see, you read the project description. It's a 3-story house on a very steep lot, proposed to be located with the face of the garage right at the property line, with the driveway improvements and a bit of the retaining walls you see in this rendering actually in the right-of-way. The project requires a front setback modification for the setback encroachment, and also the retaining walls along the sides of the house and some of the stepped planter walls exceed the required height limit of 3.5 feet within 10 feet of the front lot line. So if you can imagine from the face of the garage going back 10 feet all the way across the lot is kind of the zone of the lot where the height limit for walls is limited to 3.5 feet. and they're necessarily taller than that to do the retaining that they have to do. This is a site plan regarding the zoning setback. The zone itself has a required 20-foot front setback, except there's a provision in the ordinance that allows that front setback to be reduced when there's a steeply sloped condition, and this lot exceeds that amount, so the setback per the code is reduced by 5 feet. So the 20 feet is reduced by 5 feet. So the required setback from the front lot line is 15 feet, so that's the requested modification, is to go all the way to the front lot line instead of being back 15 feet. It's a very steep site, kind of an oak woodland. Some background on the project. The project back in circa 2015 had an approval. Very similar situation. The front setback modification was approved to allow a similar 3-story house. It was a little bit smaller in floor area and a little bit narrower. This house, compared to the approved projects, extended a little bit there as we're looking at this image, a little bit to the right. Otherwise, very similar. One other difference is the previous project didn't have a roof deck. It was just 3 stories. There's a building permit that's currently issued, and they've done a little bit of rough grading and some of the tree removals, or maybe they've completed all the tree removals. The project proposes to replace the oak trees as mitigation for removing them. Staff sort of just picked up on the environmental review that was done for the previous project rather than reinvent the wheel and start at zero. The applicable regulations are the same, so we just kind of looked at the difference in the design of this project versus the previous one, and we used the conditions of approval from the prior project too, because they'd already kind of fleshed out what conditions of approval are appropriate. So the setback encroachment, just to give a sense of how steep the site is, I figured if you go back 15 feet from the front lot line, the grade is about 20 feet above the street, so it's extreme. I mean, you've got the distance between the paved street, the right-of-way beyond the edge of the paving goes up steeply. Then you get to the front lot line, and then you go back another 15 feet to the front setback, so it's very high back there. The wall height is hard to describe and hard to picture. That's why we didn't give you a number of feet and inches that the proposed walls are, because they're very sloped and they're a little bit hard to decipher. We just described the request in here as walls to exceed 3.5 feet. Some of them go up probably to 20 feet or so instead of 3.5. Again, you'd have to picture where the right-of-way line is and then the 10 feet back, so the strip of property that's the first 10 feet behind the front property line, how high that is. But one good way to see it is with these section drawings. So going back, you can see here, I always have difficulty zooming in.
I think if you go down at the bottom, it might appear. There you go.
Okay. So here you can see these planter walls, and the reason for that is to not only do the retaining for the building, but also to soften its appearance by providing a space to put landscaping there. And similarly over here, these walls also, there's definitely a taller than 3.5 foot condition here, but the zoning regulations don't apply in the right-of-way, so that's just a right-of-way encroachment. But then the walls continue to get taller and taller here within, this is a 15-foot line, but the 10-foot line comes back to here. But then if you compare this drawing to the sections through the planters, it makes it a little easier to understand. So here we've got the 10-foot line is right about here. And then if we look at the section for that, that's this one. So then we've got the 10-foot lines back here, and this is probably between 15 and 20 feet. And then on the reverse side over here, again, this is in the right-of-way, so we're talking about this area back here in terms of wall height. So the 15-foot or 10-foot line is back at about where this third planter wall is located. So that comes down. We've got the way when you have multiple retaining walls, how their heights are added together. These walls are not separated to the degree that they would be treated separately. So we're basically going from this line here, the first floor line, up to about here. Anyway, point being, they clearly exceed 3.5 feet, and staff believes that they're necessarily exceeding that height. The project requires design review because of the slope of the lot and being located in the Hillside Design District. And it's gone to the Single Family Design Board 2 times, and they did a great job. I went there to give them some preliminary comments that this is a legal lot and there's a right to develop it with a house, and they understood that. So they did a great job of trying to do what they normally do, which is when you introduce a new house into the neighborhood, make it compatible and fit into the neighborhood. But in this case, well, they tried to do that, but also realizing that this lot is not at all like the other lots, which are more normal lots. So they tried to, I think they did a great job of balancing those two things. How do we introduce a house on a super steep lot like this while making it compatible with the others in the neighborhood? And the project will return back to them. They still have some kind of unanswered questions and some more refinements to be done, but the basic size, height, mass, location, all that sort of things fleshed out enough with them that you can review the modifications, and then it'll get the final tune-up in terms of the materials and colors and landscaping when it returns back to them. So staff supports the requested modifications. We had the findings in the staff report that conforming to the required 15-foot front setbacks would be an unreasonable hardship. That's one of the findings for a modification. And locating it in the front setback is an appropriate improvement, because if you try to push it back any further, it just gets into much more grading. A little bit of movement backwards results in a lot more grading. And also the front lot line is further back than you would think, looking at where the street is located and the street paving, the actual edge of the street. So there is a buffer between the traffic lane, the traveled way of the street, and the front of the house. And I described how we think the planters are necessary, or retaining walls are necessary to exceed the height limit. So that concludes my presentation. And the architect is here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Robin. And I would like to invite the architect to come up and to please state your name. And if you could walk me through your considerations, the change in design. I think it would be really helpful for me to understand kind of the change in architecture, kind of the difference between what was previously, if you are, I don't even know if you were the same architect necessarily, but just kind of with this new project, kind of what you're trying to accomplish, and kind of some of the rationale between with the decisions you've made. And certainly heard a lot about the front setback, but curious to hear more about the walls and just your different thoughts on that. So you can just walk us through.
Okay. Let's start off with the previous design.
And if you could just state your name for the record.
I got to do that first. Yes. Hi, I'm Eddie Osage. I'm with Neon Associates, I'm the architect.
And if you also, forgive me, I think you got to turn your mic on. Sorry.
Hi, this is Eddie.
It's such a learning curve when you do this the first time, and you know, there's
the bad part is
like, we'll
it's my
figure it
third
out
time.
together. We'll figure it out together.
But I'm Eddie Osuch. I'm with Neon Associates, and I'm the architect for the project. And it started. Let's start from the beginning. This project was brought to us with it was a 3-story building, but it had real limited living space to actually function as a home, and that was the real issue that was brought to me. And so we realized that as we were, the amount that was being dug into the surface of the site, what we suggested was to fan it out a little bit more, and we gained some additional square footage by doing that, but we weren't going any deeper. We were just going a little bit wider. And then also, if you see when you see the base, when you see the ground floor, you'll see how that's happening. And also, where we've added square footage is mostly on the 2nd and 3rd floors. It's in the living areas where we didn't want to dig any more into the bottom. And that's kind of where it all started. The original design also had a roof line that visually I don't think it didn't really work really well with the existing hillside. So that's why we introduced, yes, it is a little bit more modern, but we're trying to work with the levels of the hillside as well. So those some of the items. The walls, the large walls that you see on the side, we've been going through several design iterations, trying to interweave them into the existing hillside. So we actually went through, do we step it, do we block it? So actually, the 2 side walls are angling down pretty much at the slope of the existing grade. We're 18 inches above, so that we can get all the earth and water that should move. Everything stays out of that condition. And then the stepping down as we go towards the street. We were trying to, we're really doing our best to not have a significant face on the street. We kept stepping as much as we could back, and at the same time, trying not to dig too far into the hillside. So let me just take you through some of the plans.
Great, thank you.
But actually, the rendering actually kind of gives me a lot of leeway on this. And now I realize now I need my glasses. So what we did is, first of all, we changed up the materials on the retaining walls on the sides. We have it's going to be a composite wood-looking material so that it can handle the moisture that's coming down. And you can see the concrete of the 2, we're going to have to cast the side walls in concrete. It's just not going to step right. We just went through so many iterations. And the rest of the feature we tried as much as, we integrated even more planters throughout onto the interior decks. You can see as it goes across. And it's almost like the whole thing has become a tiered garden. And just to keep blending towards the hillside as much as possible. And at the same time, yes, I know it's white. It does pop out. But that is part of the neighborhood aesthetic as well. And we also stepped back the roof terrace, as you can see at the very top on the left, a little bit of green coming over. We have even a roof garden on top of that piece as well. So the whole thing is meshed into the hillside. Let me just walk you through. You can see some of the materials here. The wood siding that we're suggesting for the walls, the glass railing. We went through different iterations of the railing, and the retaining concrete. You can see it's going to be but we're not going to leave it concrete covered. We're coming back in with that dark green brown so that it looks like we carved it out of the existing space. Let me go to, keep going. Am I going down? Is this
It could
faster
be,
way?
you can, maybe you move the mouse and just kind of drag it. Again,
Oh, that's
there's
the easiest
learning
way.
curves to all of this.
Yeah.
and No judgment.
There we go. So, as Tony pointed out, we are inside that front setback. But you can also see the hillside keeps aggressively going up as it goes towards the back. We're pushing it all the way over to the right, taking it out of the view of the rest of the street. As you come up the hillside, you literally, I mean, by the time you get here, you're almost turning towards it. So if you're at the beginning of Mitchell Terreno, you're not going to see it, is what I'm trying to say. So it presents itself almost as you get to the curve near the end of the street. And you can kind of see that on the, you can see it here. As you come up Mitchell Terreno, you're going to see the adjacent 3-story home and their retaining wall. You'll see that long before you see our, this project. And it's also going uphill. Okay, and let me go to, as far as the trees are concerned, all the trees that are being removed that are protected are being relocated on site. And we're leaving that whole zone on the left, natural. And this is our latest effort as far as landscaping is concerned. We're using, these are the pre-approved plans from City of Santa Barbara. So we dug through those and put them throughout to help, what do I want to say, mitigate the effects of that stepping wall. It's going to become a cascade of plants is what's going to happen. A waterfall. So you can see here, let me go to, so this is a piece that is most visible from the street. You can see this is the front of that retaining wall on the left. And this is the beginning of the stepping all the way to the left. And this is that retaining wall on the right. This is the impact zone, like how you're going to be able to get into this garage. So it's almost all about the garage. We have a little entry and a tiny study with a front little porch entry. And that goes all into the back, and we're putting all the stairs and that kind of utilitarian items are towards the back, as well as the elevator. So that is all contained inside of this mass. So the ground floor footprint really has not increased. It's the second floor we pushed out to actually make these bedrooms work. So this is the master suite. It's actually a little bit of a inverted plan as far as the bedrooms are on the second floor, and the living is on the top. And that's, of course, to enjoy the view. And when you're sleeping, you're a little bit lower. So you can see the 2 bedrooms here, and the smaller windows that you see on the elevation are for the restrooms. And then we go to the top, and we have a little bit of a cut-in deck here. And this is the large relatively large living space. There's one last bedroom up here as well, but this is all centered around that set of stairs in the middle here, and then there's one last set that goes up to the roof. And there should be one more. There we go. There's the rooftop. Here on the left as well, we're actually going to put a roof garden. We're not, it's still a little too high of grade, so we can't use it. And we wanted to actually push back and have some open space. when you see the site, there's really no flat open space, absolutely zero. And this is the only spot in the entire project that we're suggesting. And then this is a little bit higher. And then we have like reflected ceiling plants and that kind of thing. Let me see. I think, and here's some of the sections. You can see here how we've moved it closer to the street for the base levels, for where the garage is. Actually, this is going through the hall, to be more specific. And as it goes up the level here, this is that higher living space. We're actually going to step the retaining wall back a little bit so we can actually get enough room to work in here. So we're pushing this, we do have this fascia right here, but then we push back again. So I think you can see there's front elevation, but this one's a little bit deceiving because this is totally in the background. Actually, the rendering is a lot clearer. You can see it on the right here. I mean, that's really my side elevation. I only have enough for a couple windows. So that's revealing about how much people will see it from the side. And even on the front, this is so high up. I think if you're standing in the driveway, if you're standing in the street in front of it, you can probably see to this handrail. This is totally hidden, though. And then we have details. So let me go back. It's mostly about the massing.
And does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
All right, good deal. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to open it up to public comment and invite anyone who, I know I have Mr. Javon. Yeah, if you want to come up first. I just didn't know if you wanted to speak. So
I submitted my comment, but I can read it.
yeah, why don't that's just nice to have.
Thank you. All right.
And if you could also state your name for
Yes,
the
of
record
course.
formally, and you can stay up here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Russell. I live with my spouse, Justin Hoops, at 1231 West Mitchell-Turena Street. And I do want to say we welcome neighbors, so this is not in any way to express concern about new neighbors. This neighborhood is wonderful and beautiful, and we cherish each and every neighbor we have and welcome new ones. But we do have some concerns regarding the proposed plans. First, I know there's been a few meetings. We were unable to attend one of the meetings in May, but I think there was also a meeting in July where these were discussed, and none of the neighbors received any notification about that. So we just wanted to state that, because if we had, we might have expressed our concerns earlier. But one of our main concerns is privacy. We know, that the plans propose setback modifications and then all of these front terraces and a roof terrace. And we're concerned that that will just have truly unimpeded views into our backyard. So we are just across the street. Our yard is on this corner lot. And so our entire yard, much of it is considered front yard, but it really is our backyard. And the new neighbors here would have direct view into our yard and into some of our windows. So we're concerned about that. And just wanted to express concern that one of the things we love about the neighborhood is it is a hill, but each home seems to have been kind of situated and designed in a way to really respect privacy. Again, it's a very warm neighborhood. We know all of our neighbors, but when we are in our yard, we really can't see into anyone else's yard. And we've noticed the same thing in some of the other neighbors' yards as well. These are small homes too, so that's part of it. Our home is about just under 900 square feet. So I guess one thing we're thinking is if this plan does move forward, if this does become built, we would need to kind of build something in our yard just to create a sense of privacy, because we want to enjoy that. We do not want to be, we want to protect our own kind of sense of space there. But of course, then we would also need to request some modifications if we were building some type of protective structure, just so that, again, we do not feel like we're constantly being looked at by this new 3 almost 4-story structure. So we just wanted to express those concerns, but in advance, welcome any new neighbors that come in, but want to just make sure that the needs of the existing neighbors are also respected. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to invite Mr. Esper. And forgive me if I didn't pronounce that properly.
No, you're good. Good morning. My name is Gibran Esper. I actually live right next door to the right side.
If I'm looking at this, that's on the right?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, like our neighbor Elizabeth said, we welcome new neighbors, and I wish them good luck with the construction and everything. The only thing I just had a comment, because last year I did a small addition to my house, and I'm actually a designer too, and I had to go through the board, and I had to step back 20 feet, and also I have to be in, like looking at the design requirements, and I read all the information about the privacy, so I took that in consideration. So the thing is, like with the rooftop right there, there are people, there are houses on the hill behind me, so every time somebody speak slowly, you could hear it from the house. So my consideration is like with the rooftop, people there, night, parties, how's that gonna work? The other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if it's related or not, it's been a year. When we first moved to the house, it was nice and woods and all that. So again, good luck with the construction. The only thing is there's sandbags that keep ripping, and the dirt that comes in from there, that keep coming right into our drive-in. I keep cleaning it because the city truck comes in and clean right before it. It doesn't go, it used to go up, it doesn't go up anymore. So now all the dirt falls on our driveway. But again, we're good neighbors. We'll love to do anything. I'm not really complaining about it. I'm just mentioning it. Like, how long would that process take? It's like 2 years you sit out, you look at the plastic orange and orange cones, and trucks, white trucks come in, runs over the bags, rip them open. So just, to see how long would that process is gonna take more, sitting there instead of, having a nice clean streets, like always there's something going on. But good luck, and I hope all goes well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your comments. And I think that's all I see for in-person. Ms. Gu, do we have anyone who is attending via Zoom who wishes to speak this time?
Upon checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands or attendees. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and we'll go back to some questions. And I think it would just be helpful to perhaps respond to some of the privacy concerns that Mr. Hoops and Ms. Russell had mentioned in their public comment, and just kind of the considerations, if you could just consider. I mean, I understand kind of, again, that there has been an approved residence already on this particular site, but if you could walk us through just what your thinking is in response.
Okay. As far as this is, let's start off with the top floor and work our way down. Let's go. Okay. So this is actually, this is floor, this is the main floor with the master suite and the bedroom. So the windows that are looking out over, they're actually inside of this. It's the folding door for the bedroom, and this other, not folding door, Arcadia style door, sliding glass door. I'll get to the right nomenclature eventually. But both of those are faced with we have a 5-foot deck in front of that. So the line of sight for those two is it's going to be higher than the actual, it's going to be above like normal vision height, just because of the angle of the street. I think this particular floor, it would be difficult to see down into the neighbor's yard. This one, however, we could, there is an issue, I would imagine, for the bedroom. We've
All the
also,
way to the left, okay.
yeah, this one to the left, I believe we could, I don't know how we would design around that. I need some kind of way to have some kind of view out of that. And also, this sliding door here is already, we've already pushed it inside of the surface inside of, it's underneath the rooftop as well. So this is pushed back and it's actually angled away, so it's not looking directly across the street. But this one, it is a concern. I'll take that in consideration and see if we can, maybe we can come up with some kind of interesting louver idea or something to have it not look directly out in that direction. That really, yeah, I could see, this one is something that we could go back and modify. As far as the roof is concerned, this is a little deceiving because you don't see, if you look at the scope, this, follow the orange lines, let's put it. You can see the balcony is sitting on the orange line here. That's the edge of the property. So this one is already, this window's already pushed back 5 feet, and this deck is now 7 to 10 feet back. Okay, but by the time we get to the roof, we're already beyond the 10-foot setback.
And can I
Michelle.
ask, in regards
Yeah.
to the site plan, I understand, so we have required open yard as a development standard. And for single-family homes, it's 1,250 square feet, and this lot clearly meets it. But the way that the site plan is shown, it calls out the open yard on the plans, which technically meets the standard. But is any of that area really kind of, like, it's not usable, is what I understand?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, but we had to, there was really no other option for it. I mean, but we're leaving as much as we can open. Yeah, I don't know where to go with that.
No, I think I'm just trying to, I think there are multiple, the intention for open yard is, there's multiple reasons for it. One is just kind of a sense of space and openness. Another is to create like usable outdoor, and I just want to kind of acknowledge, like that despite this project meeting the open yard standards, it's not generally, that area is not necessarily going to be used for sitting and, activities.
Oh, no.
I just want to clear, just
Yeah,
confirmation on that. And again, I've went out and visited the site, so I'm familiar with it. And I think I actually, prior perhaps to your purchasing the neighboring home, I've actually toured that home, and I know the site very well. That must have been a while, years ago. So I'm familiar with that. It could have been actually for a zoning information report. But I know the landscaping and the extreme slope. Okay. I'd like to just ask, and this might be a question for Mr. Baumann. Given the improvements in the public right-of-way, Public Works Engineering is supportive of all of the, can you just confirm if Public Works is supportive of what's happening?
Yes, Ms. Goodkind, we did a application completeness review with this, and Public Works was involved in that, and I had them consider carefully. Like I said, our conditions of approval were we kind of reused the previous conditions of approval. So I had them look at that to make sure, because this, some of the configuration, particularly in the right-of-way, is a little bit different with this project, and asked them if they needed to modify the conditions. I don't think we ended up modifying them, but they did review it.
Okay.
It's understood that there's a public works permit, and they looked over the conditions regarding the traffic control and keeping the street open during construction and all that sort of thing. I think I might have got off track from your direct question.
No, I think that's right. I just wanted, again, there's a lot of this is just confirmation, because I know that this project already had to go through a lot of these questions.
Since I'm up here, one point regarding the open yard. You probably remember before the Title 30 zoning ordinance, there was a requirement for sloped lots for single family. It was the same 1,250 square feet, but there was also a requirement to have some usable level open yard. I think it was 150 square foot was the zoning requirement. So the previous house had a modification for an approval to not provide that level
Right,
part of
okay.
the open yard. It didn't have the roof deck, and there was no part of the site that wasn't steeply sloped. So it had approval of an open yard modification for that usable open yard piece.
And did the single-family design board discuss the roof deck at all? That you all recall?
They did. They questioned it. They didn't indicate they weren't okay with it. They asked I remember they asked me if the previous house had ever proposed a roof deck. And I said I didn't know. I just seen the plans for the building permit where it does not have one. I don't know if they ever proposed a roof deck previously or not.
And I don't know if you can answer that question.
They had a concern about it in the first meeting because we had an additional higher retaining wall behind it. So we actually lowered the level of the access. That one little strip is just the top of the stair. That's all that's in there. There's no additional program on that level. And we also lowered the wall as much as we could around it. So the front profile actually came down. I think we brought it down 3.5 feet.
All right. Let me think if there's any other questions.
Oh, and they actually asked us to, we did push it back as well.
Okay. I do think that it was very helpful to have you go through the different floors and kind of your rationale for kind of stair stepping the kind of planter sections in order to mask that wall. I mean, that was probably my biggest concern, is just, a big concrete wall and how extreme that can look. And so I appreciate all the work that's gone to kind of continue to, to address that. And, again, having gone out on site, I think just a couple of things that I want to respond to. One, this is a legal lot. This is like anyone who takes this on as a project, this is an extremely difficult project. Just not your typical new construction home. And we've seen so much with just the pattern of development as you go up the Micheltorena and kind of go around. There's really some kind of engineering challenges and feats that are pretty significant. I appreciate that in terms of looking at expanding the home, that you didn't want to contribute to more significant grading, and trying to minimize that as much as possible, and kind of keeping with something closer to this original approved residence. And again, this is a legal lot, and I think that's very helpful for people to understand, and despite looking at it and thinking, how do you build something there? I do believe that so much of how this is massaged and how this will evolve will be kind of on the shoulders of the single family design board. I really want to be clear with anyone watching that my role as the staff hearing officer is for the land use approvals only. But there's kind of a communication between, the staff hearing officer and the single-family design board who are responsible for looking at this. So I take a lot of their considerations in mind, and then I know that I have to look to them in order to address some of the things. So for one, privacy, I think I would like that particular piece of it, and I want to encourage Mr. Hoops and Ms. Russell, and then Mr. Esber to continue to, we're going to add you as interested parties to the Single Family Design Board so that you get emails every time this project will go to a meeting. But that's a little bit of what they're going to massage through the Single Family Design Board process. I think for me, the issue of, I think that I feel it's sufficiently set back. Kind of as you're mentioning, there's a 5-foot, despite the balconies or the front balconies on the second floor off the bedroom. You've got kind of a 5-foot buffer there to kind of address some of the angle issues for privacy. And I mean, if it's their bedrooms, I'm guessing they don't necessarily want to be on show either necessarily. So I think it could work a little bit both ways. With the other, with the third floor, again, kind of the angle and the direction of the primary living space or the kitchen kind of open concept area should address some of the kind of cloister that and have it set back and angled in a way so it might not be as dramatic. I would highly encourage you to continue to work with this neighbor across the street to maybe come up with some design considerations for privacy. Again, that I believe should be addressed at the next single family design board meeting. And hopefully you can come up with something that is a little bit, is a little bit of a trade-off there. But with the rooftop, I think there's always sensitivity to rooftops. It's always it's a huge question. It looks like, okay, you're gonna have the big party up there. It comes up for any type of project. I do think kind of buffering that or just, first of all, you just have to be reasonable neighbors, and that's like a huge part of it. And there are other, there's the fact that this is such a unique lot with many different constraints that it's really, like, I look at the rooftop and think of it as a benefit of having a flat area that is usable, that can be enjoyed with a little bit more space, knowing that the actual open yard, the designated open yard, just for zoning development standard purposes, isn't really usable for enjoyment of activity, given the slope. So I think it's part of it, just what's being a reasonable neighbor, trying to kind of create those buffers. I think having the going back to the walls, I think it's imperative that so long as this project is here, that those planters are maintained. And, if things don't survive, that something needs to be there. Otherwise, it kind of can be a little bit stark. And I think some of the conditions address that, and the Single Family Design Board will kind of make the decisions on the plantings and everything, but I can go ahead and support the wall height modification and say that it's consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance and the height limit, because really the proposed walls are trying to create a situation to use this legal lot and to create a residence, and that this is necessary. And as we've seen it on the adjacent properties, that other retaining walls are really needed in order to develop here. So, I think that I agree with staff's assessment on that. I can also approve the front setback modification because following staff's recommendation, Mr. Baum, you did a great job. It's really, it's an unreasonable hardship. And if you were to set this back to the 20 feet, you would be cutting into the hillside even more. And that's very much something that we try to avoid in design and our single family design guidelines, and anything in the hillside design district. We're trying to minimize that kind of significant grading. We know that there's going to be a good chunk of it, but again, that part of this is to allow the actual development of a residence, and it's not that much more significant than what was already approved. I appreciate the stepping back so that it's not creating just one giant wall or plane along the front, but that it's kind of responsibly set back. And again, even with the planes of the balcony decks, you're still setting back the actual residence and the walls and the fenestration further back. So it kind of, again, it tears a little bit and doesn't feel, I feel like the relationship it has to the street is responsible and, again, fits the pattern of the development and therefore is consistent with, again, the intentions, the purpose of our zoning ordinance as well as our design guidelines. Again, I do think that all of these approvals are subject to conditions, and I just kind of want to walk through a couple of the conditions because it's very dense. And I think to address the neighbors' concerns about construction and how this is going to play out, and I know there's got to be a lot of anxiety around that and what the situation is and kind of how it's currently maintained. And, you know, again, I just want to really make sure, are you clear? Have you read through all the conditions of approval? Is the owner familiar with this? Like what is to be expected
Yeah.
with all of this?
Yeah, he has reviewed them, and we understand that, you know, should this project go forward, there's a lot of, let's just say, maintenance that has to be done correctly in order to have the construction proceed. We've heard, similar to his remarks, we've heard that at other hearings, that it could really affect things. So that's something that the construction, like, as we get this out to bid, that's a major part of whoever we're going to, they're not going to be able to show up unless their whole process is totally approved. So,
Okay, and as Mr. Baumann mentioned, that we, a lot of the conditions were kind of pulled from the previously approved residence, and I just want to clean some of these up because I think some of them might have changed just because there's an existing building permit that's already been pulled for demo and tree removal. So condition C1, Parks and Recreation Commission tree removal approval, that's already happened. So I'm just going to strike that from the record. Condition C4, B, which has to do with the arborist report and tree protection plan. So B1I, so during construction, you are required to have a pre-construction meeting. And it says, a pre-construction meeting shall be held with the project arborist and the contractors prior to the commencement of the work to discuss tree protection measures. I'm going to be adding a planning staff member as well because I want someone there to facilitate the conversation. And sometimes you get an arborist and the contractors and they're kind of like, what are we doing here? Why do we have to have this conditioned meeting? And I feel like planning staff will be, you know, just having a planning staff representative will be able to go through all of those conditions and to make sure and to kind of explain and verify, and so we get everybody on the same page. So the planning staff is really there to facilitate this conversation and help make that bridge. So I just want to acknowledge that. That's kind of a key point in terms of ensuring that arborist conditions are met. Once you have an established certified arborist.
Ms. Kuykendall,
yeah.
could I make a suggestion on that?
Yeah, please.
Since that's a good point to have staff out there for the pre-construction meeting. But I was just thinking, imagining myself in that position, going to that pre-construction meeting and looking through some of these other conditions. I think we would like to talk when we're holding that meeting with the contractors about the conditions in E2 and 3. That's E is construction implementation requirements. And it might be worth reiterating or discussing with them the construction, storage, and staging.
Absolutely.
And also construction parking.
Absolutely. So we can, so yes, I like that extension. It's really to address all the concerns, and so much of this is for the neighbors' benefit, to ensure that we're on the same page and that, and kind of what's clear. Yes, so we can add that. And then,
Or maybe say that what we're discussing is just
yeah, we can, well,
generally
we
the
might play
conditions
around
of
with the
approval.
conditions to kind of address both points.
Because there's some for construction-related truck trips and haul routes. We could cover all that in this pre-construction
Yes,
meeting.
thank you. I think that's critical. And again, your conditions are dense, but again, it's meant to address a lot of the things. And I think those were all of the, there's one more change I have to make on, there is a small error at the very end, notice of modification approval time limits. It says, the staff hearing officer action approving the modification shall terminate 2, that should be 3. So it has the number 3 listed, but it needs to write out 3, because the 3 years from this approval is when, this date is when. So that's just our clarification, like a clerical error that we can make. So any questions about that? No. Okay. Well, again, I just want to thank you for your presentation, and Mr. Baumann, and thank neighbors for joining us today. We're going to make sure that all of the neighbors' emails have been, those who submitted comments and spoke today, that their emails are included on the single-family design board's case records. So I know that Ms. Russell had mentioned that neighbors didn't get a notice. So the times that you will receive a mailed notice for this project are the very first single-family design board meeting, which already happened in May. It will be the staff hearing officer meeting, which is today, and you should have received your mailed postcard. And then you will also receive a mailed postcard for when this project goes back to SFDB for project design approval. So that is just, so you can expect a mailed notice, but if we add you to the email list for the SFDB hearings, you will also receive an automatic email anytime this project is scheduled. So just because we don't send mailed notices every single time a project comes, it's only for the initial concept, for project design approval, and for any land use approval. So, so there could be additional concept review. You went through 2 concept reviews, and then eventually you'll have to get final approval as well. That doesn't include a mailed notice, but if you're on the email list, people will know that you should get, and as an interested party, you would get an email notice from the Single Family Design Board Secretary. So I think to continue to participate at SFDB, and the next time this project will be scheduled would likely be for that. Ms. Gu, can you switch over, please, to the screen? Okay, I do want to say that today my decisions, any decision of the staff hearing officer may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. So from 10 calendar days from now, any person can submit an appeal. Similarly, if a member of the Planning Commission disagrees or wants to discuss more with the Planning Commission, they could suspend my decisions within that same 10-day calendar time period. So that's just kind of clarification. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much.